Hello, I'm Deb Morgan of Not a Rehearsal, and I've got the honour and the privilege of interviewing a number of the authors who contributed to this book, Revival, Women Embracing Their Superpowers. Now, I'm joined today by Ruth Pearson, and Ruth is a leadership and well-being coach and trainer of Listening to Your Voice Limited. Ruth, it's great to have you here.
Welcome. Nice to be with you, Deb.
Good, good. Now, Ruth, what a story. I mean, I read your first two paragraphs and thought, okay, my goodness, there's a lot here. And then it went on again. So give me a brief overview. You started off, you were diagnosed with lupus.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had some challenges after that. Tell me what those few challenges were, because I want to talk about the worst day.
Okay.
In a little while. So just tell me about the challenges up until that point.
So I think at the time when I was first diagnosed with lupus, my children were 2 and 4 at the time. So you can imagine at those times, like I first knew about lupus watching this TV program called Lady Killers. And it was talking about these diseases that, like, if you get them, your prognosis is 5 years. So you can imagine that I've got this disease, my children are 2 and 4, and I'm just looking and thinking, I'm not going to be around for them growing up. And then at the same time, like probably months after I got diagnosed, then I ended up getting divorced from the boy's dad. So it was like, diagnosed with this disease, then just got divorced, and then literally months after that, then we had this serious car accident. So it was like 3 major events, impacts on my life within a year. And in the car accident, almost lost my son in there, and then I ended up with significant back injuries. So I had to take months off from work to recover. So there was like trauma upon trauma upon trauma, but it's like digging down. So like my faith is really important to me, and that's what got me through. It's like people will ask you, how did you get through that? And then just having supportive family around that were there with me at that time. So I said, yeah, it was just like, and then literally when we're just about coming through this, then my dad died suddenly. So when I was saying in the book, there was lots of trauma within like, a year, 18 months. That was the trauma I was talking about.
Goodness. So when they talk about the most stressful things that people can go through, you've got death with your dad dying, you've got divorce from your children's father, and then you have a serious car accident in there as well. And you have, you're diagnosed with would have been a life-limiting disease.
Yeah.
But you've got lots of time off work. And am I right in thinking you were a teacher at that time?
I was a teacher at that time, secondary school teacher.
So you're a secondary school teacher. So all of that has happened. You've gone back to work, and then you have what you describe as your worst day at work ever.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
So this is like, fast forward now, obviously now my illness has improved to some extent. So now we fast forward now, my children are obviously, they're a lot older now, degrees. So the worst day at work, that was working out 5 years ago. So again, working in a secondary school environment, the year before I'd got made redundant. So now having to sort of build myself back up in this school, and the school children and the management are on a different page to me. The children's game is, let's see how many teachers we can end up leaving the school. And I'm trying to work with some students actually to try and get through their exam, because they're year 11 students. If they don't pass this exam, then they're going to fail their exam. So I went to make a call to get some of these students taken out of the classroom. And instead of making the call, there I am in the prep room, crying my eyes out, my head's spinning, I'm about to drop to the concrete floor. And my colleague comes out to get a piece of paper for a student in her classroom. And she has me in her arms, and I'm just crying like a baby. And all she's saying to me is, not you, Ruth, not you. You don't deserve to go through this. So she had to make sure I was safe, call people at the school, like the other part of the school, to say, someone needs to come here with Ruth. So for me, that was like, I've been through so many challenges before, but this was almost like all the other stuff is like, I wouldn't say natural, but it's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
But having this meltdown for someone who's a really, really strong person, that really took a lot out of me. And then, like, the next day I got up and I couldn't face going to work. So I ended up in my doctor's surgery and I was just crying my eyes out. And my doctor saying, I've seen you with all the other challenges that I just shared with you, and you've never been like this. So he just said, look, we need to go and we need to make sure you get the support you need. So,
oh my goodness.
yeah.
So would that be, I hear lots of people say, that it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it's normally something that they don't expect. They dealt with lots of really difficult stuff, got through all of that, and then it's something that normally they would take in their stride. But that's the one thing that floors them. Was that a sort of similar process for you?
That was definitely, because I didn't see it coming. I went to make a phone call. I've made so many phone calls before. I've dealt with disruptive students in the classroom. I've been at that time I'd been teaching for 25 years and, challenging schools. So I wasn't expecting to find myself the way I was. And I think for me, the biggest thing was when I got up the next morning and couldn't face going to work. That really, incredible. Yeah.
So that's big in itself, on top of all these other challenges. And then you say in the book, all of these challenges were stepping stones to greater things. And that brought to mind for me the Steve Jobs phrase or quote, where I think he says, you can't see, or you can't, you have to look at the stepping stones looking back. You can't join the dots going forward. You have to join the dots going back. So that you get to where you are and you wonder how on earth you've got there. But when you look at this, everything that's happened, all the challenges, you recognize that they've got you to where you are now. So when you say these were the stepping stones to greater things, would that be a similar sort of thing?
Definitely. I mean, it's like, I'm an advocate now. I do a lot of work around mental health and well-being, looking after ourselves, the whole thing about self-care, being proactive, empowering yourself, owning yourself, don't give your power to others that don't deserve it. And I think that all of this journey I've been on, that it's helped me now to realize I gave my power away to people who didn't appreciate it. And therefore now it's about, because I've seen that, now moving forward, I guard my time a lot more. So it's like, like people might come with project ideas. And if I think, do I want to do this or don't I want to do this? I won't automatically now just say yes. Where in the past, that would be something I'd think I'd have to do.
Wow. So I can hear from what you're saying that, you've learned so many lessons from these challenges. It's, I think so many of us do. Sort of when we get to a place where we're feeling stronger and healthy, we reflect upon the past and what's got us to where we are. And I'm hearing, you looked after yourself. You stopped giving away your power. And these are really strong statements, aren't they? How would you describe that process of looking after yourself, of not giving away your power, to somebody who was in a place where they said, I've got to start looking after myself, I've got to stop giving away my power? What small steps could you advise them to try and do that, to look after themselves and stop giving away their power?
So I think the first thing for me is, like, either at the end of the day or the next day, think about, well, what do you want to do for yourself? That sometimes find things that, there might be little things, like one of the other roles I do is like helping carers, because obviously I've had to be cared for and I'm a carer. And when you're in that role, sometimes just getting out of bed, having some time for you to just go and have a shower, put some clothes on, just little things like that. To some people, others will sit down and they'll think, well, that's a big thing. But for some people, that is a big thing. So it's about you find the space where you are. What would be something that would make a difference in your life for that day? It might be picking up a book and reading something, or sitting down watching a movie, or, just like for me, because I was on this treadmill, sitting and playing a game on my phone, I thought I should be doing something. So it's just find something that you like to do and do it for that day.
Okay.
And therefore, once you start to do that, then, you do like one thing, and then the next day you might have 2 or 3 things. And then when the day comes, you think, right, okay, I've done all of this for other people, but I've had some time to do some things for myself.
Fabulous. So I think I read in your chapter that your mindfulness, you deal with mindfulness and well-being as well. And this would tie in with that therapy, if you like, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing, and so important to take that time for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I was doing a presentation yesterday about self-care and all the different things we can do, like even cooking, going for a walk, just like, making sure we have enough water, having enough sleep, things that, like, in life, we would just sit down and think, are they important? And I think, like, the journey that I've been on, like, you realize it's those little things that make the big difference. But if you don't look after the little things, then the bigger things get put out of proportion. And therefore, like, if you look after the little things, when things do happen, like, the big pandemic and people are asking, well, how are you coping? I turn around and says, for me, this is like, I've got time now to do some things I'd like to do. Because normally when I'm sick, I'm home for months and I can't do lots of things. So for me, this has given me an opportunity. Yes, I've got to do my work for school, but it allows me to grow, do personal development, a lot of things that is important, but you can't do when you're running someone else's timetable. So it's like, so that's the other thing, is that, that autonomy for yourself, that, and even if you're working for someone else, just make sure that you do have some time for you.
And that's so important, isn't it? Knowing your boundaries, I guess. And you've just mentioned something that I wanted to pick up on, is that you said you're back in school. Are you back at the same school, or are you elsewhere? Talk to me about that.
So I went to work in another. So I've been on this journey. So when I had the meltdown, when I had my first coach I was working with, he said to me, Ruth, the meltdown that you've been on is going to be your gift. He said, you might not think about it now, but it's going to be your gift. And the day, like, after I came back from the doctors, I picked up a pen and I started to just write how I felt. And it was like I was talking about, why is it in school that all these children have the same opportunity, but they have different outcomes? And it's to do with their attitude and the amount of effort they put in. So, like, I'm a teacher there trying to work with you. But if you don't want to have the effort, if you don't want to listen, if you don't want to do certain things, then no matter what I do, you can't learn.
Okay.
So I started then it's pen now. It's actually become like a strategy that I use that's called Steps to Learn. So Steps is looking after your well-being, and Learn is actually what is learning about.
Okay.
And I've been working on this for a few years, doing supply here and there. And then I got an opportunity to work in a new school that's literally just around the corner from my house. And it's like, do I go, don't I go? Because obviously with the challenges I've had in other schools, I was kind of reluctant to go and sign my name on a contract that I couldn't get out of a quick stance if I did want to. But it's been good for me, because with it just being year 7 students, some of the things I've learnt along the way about personal development, looking after yourself, the things we tell ourselves, I've been able to do with these students. And because they're year 7s, which means that 11, 12-year-old, it's being able to embed some things into them that isn't normally in the school curriculum. But so I've been able to teach them personal development through teaching science.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I think it's so important that our children are taught, the wider remit, and rather than just the knowledge they need to learn to pass their exams. Actually, they need to be taught the things they need to get through life, really, don't they? I think.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic that you're doing that. And I love that all of your challenges have put you in this position to be able to help teach and support the younger generation, who are going to be the leaders of the future. So, they're going to come to a point where they'll be able to say, oh, I learned this at school, and this is so important because of, our teacher, Miss Pearson. And I think that's wonderful. Ruth, I've got a question to ask about, how did you end up writing your story for this book? How did that come about?
How did it come about? So in the time, so like in between working in the schools, I took some time out.
Mhm.
I just like, I'd become completely disillusioned with the education system. I heard people saying it wasn't fit for purpose. So I went on a journey because I wanted to see why. And one day, Sharon Brown from Revival Sanctuary, she sent me a message, reached out to me and said she's setting up this networking group for women online. Would I like to join? And then as part of that, to just write our story, write our story about where we are. She's looking for people who've been through challenges in their life so that they can support other women who are going through challenges. And that she would just put our stories on a website that she had at the time, and that we could just start to interact with each other. So that's where it started. So I wrote my story, and then when Sharon, I remember, then invited me to be part of her advisory group. And as part of the advisory group, one of the things, like, she was thinking about changing these stories into an ebook initially. And then from the ebook, then one of the members who joined the advisory team then had a publishing company, and therefore what was going to be just an ebook then became a book.
Okay.
So it was like a journey that went on. And I think, I've got my own couple of books, as I said, that I've written, but this one was, I suppose, special because it was sharing my story along with other women who've been through challenges. So it was part of this together that, if you read the whole book, there's lots of different challenges the women have been through, but in all the stories, they've used those challenges that's helped them then to be a better version of themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, isn't it? Obviously, I'm conducting these interviews, I've read the book, I'm reading the chapters, and every single one of them inspires me in some way, and I learn something from it. And I think to do something in a collaborative manner, which I think that's what Revival Sanctuary stands for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Collaboration over competition. And that's just such an incredibly powerful message. And to see so many women in one book who have overcome some challenges, and the challenges you've gone through have been incredible. Any one of those on their own would have floored somebody else. You've gone through challenge after challenge after challenge. You've taken the learning from it all, and then you're applying it to help the younger generation. Obviously, I'm assuming you're helping yourself in the meantime because you're getting fulfillment out of that. But to help this, it's just incredible. You're giving so much after having had so much happen to you, which was beyond your control.
Yeah.
And what is it that drives you to do that?
I think I've always been, I suppose, a person to help others. So I think that's why when I had the meltdown, it was so difficult for me, because I couldn't understand why I'm in a school wanting to help you and you want to fight back against me. And I think, but because like a few years earlier, I'd got made redundant from a school, they closed the school, that we were making a difference in the school because of politics and other stuff. So there was a lot of things that were going on in my head. And I suppose it was like, I've always wanted to work with young people. I've always worked with young people. And I think the more I started to be out, I just realized that there was something missing. And that missing thing was this personal development. And I think even like, not just for the young people, for adults, I realized, I'd been through the whole school system, right up to degree level, but no one actually teaches you about personal development. You know how to pass the exams, but you don't know how to look after yourself. Like, you know the basic needs, but there's like, in terms of the whole well-being, I turn and say to people, there's like 5 areas we need to look after. So we need to look after ourselves. We need to look after ourselves physically. We need to look after ourselves intellectually, which is where all the work comes in. That we need to look after ourselves socially, and the whole thing around emotional well-being. And, so all of these areas, so some people look at the mental health and well-being and physical, but they don't think about the needs of social, or they don't think about the needs of intellectual well-being. And that's important in terms of the whole thing, why we go to school, why we learn, because by learning, then it helps us to grow in lots of different ways. So yes, I'm working with young people, but I'm also working with adults, because a lot of adults have been through some of the challenges that I've been through. And when they hear my story, they're thinking, well, if you can get through what you've been through, I'm not as far down that line as you are, so therefore I'm able to be an inspiration to them. So the same strategies I'm using with the young people, I use with adults, because they too need to learn how to look after their well-being.
That's fantastic. What a message. And Ruth, you end your chapter with an affirmation, which I think is incredibly strong. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, I'll share the affirmation. So the affirmation is, listen to your inner voice and do not let anyone stop you from being the person you know within you need to be.
I think that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Ruth Pearson, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Deb Morgan from Not a Rehearsal. I've got the honour and privilege of interviewing the authors of Revival, which is available on Amazon, or if you visit revivalsanctuary.co.uk, you'll be able to get your copy there and find out more about the authors of this incredible book. Ruth Pearson, thank you very, very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.